Oh my goodness. Isn't it glorious in number 11? No lettuce, no tomatoes, with any chips, a pickle, and an oatmeal cookie. It's like heaven in a box. Oh no, it's empty! Oh my goodness! Oh, another Jimmy John's nightmare. It's only been 3 days. Jimmy John's, I miss you so much. Come back to me. Advent seems like it was ages ago. I haven't seen you for so long, and this is going to be hard to believe. But can you believe that we're already 3 days into the season of Lent? And I have some great news for you. The hilarious, somewhat factual, flying by the seat of my pants web series Ask Father Amthor is returning once again for a new Lenten experience. So if you've been looking for a penance, that penance has come. This year for Lent, we had a marvelous thing happen. Valentine's Day landed on Ash Wednesday. And many of us, including myself, were very disappointed that we had to fast on a day that usually we associate with eating sweets and good things, and all those awesome goodies that Valentine's Day has to offer. But my friends, we must look at this in a totally different way. Valentine's Day has transformed our whole season of Lent into a season of love. Indeed, that is what Lent is all about. It's a season of love in which we encounter Christ and we focus upon Him on the cross, the most loving thing He ever did for us, to show that He's madly in love with us. And we say, Jesus, I think I've gone a little astray from you. I'm going to take the next 40 days to make some resolutions, to fast, to pray, to give alms, to show you that I am recommitted to you and that I indeed passionately love you in return. And so, for the course of this Lenten season, I'm going to focus on the most loving encounter we have with Him week after week after week, the holy sacrifice of the Mass. So stay tuned as we walk through each week one little segment of the Mass to bring further light into its symbolism, its history, and its beauty. This week, we will simply, as we prepare to enter in to the first full week of Lent next week, we will speak about how we prepare for the holy sacrifice of the Mass, what instruments we use and what is involved. So stay tuned, hold on tight. This Lent is going to be a bumpy ride. My friends, welcome to the Sacristy of St. Peter's. This is where all the behind the Mass magic happens. And as we go through, I want to show you some of the different instruments we use for Mass, talk about their names and what they're used for, and with some of them I might even throw a little good historical tidbit here or there. So hold on tight. Now before we begin, I want to explain that a lot of the instruments we use have Latin names. Now, why is that? Well, the reason is simple. When we started saying Mass, the language of the people was Latin in the Roman Empire. So a lot of our customs, traditions, and names come from this origin of our family of the Church. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the Roman Missal. The Roman Missal is a special book. That is not the Roman Missal. It is a special book that we use during Mass with certain prayers. There are 3 different prayers that change from season to season, day to day, that the priest needs to use, but also all the other prayers are in there as well. And the Missal comes from the same word as the Mass comes from, missa, which means the sending forth. So it's the book with all the Mass prayers in it. And believe it or not, I need this book. I don't have the Mass memorized. Another book that you already saw, is the lectionary. Now, the lectionary has what we call the readings in them. Lectionary comes from the Latin lectio, which means the readings. So simple as that. There are several lectionaries depending on if we're talking about a daily Mass, what cycle we're in, Sunday Mass, whatever it may be. I think there are 4 different books of lectionaries. So, but all the readings that we use for the Mass are in these books. When it comes to the sacrifice itself, we use several different things. You may have noticed this cloth laid on, usually by our servers here at St. Peter's on the altar. This cloth actually has a name. Can you believe it? It's called a corporal. And corporal comes from the Latin word for body. Because the body of Christ is laid upon this corporal and his blood as well. And so it provides an extra layer of protection should any particles fly or anything like that, so that they fall on the corporal and then they're taken care of in a special way. Along with that is called the purificator. Now the purificator is used, as you know, most of you, for cleansing the chalice in case any extra drops of his precious blood are there. And we might think to ourselves, why do we go through all this extra worry about a drop of his blood here or a particle of his body here? Well, isn't something going to be lost along the way? Of course, we're human, we make mistakes, but we take extra special care to take care of his precious blood and his sacred body, because we need to be reminded over and over again that this is indeed a precious gift. And believe it or not, these cloths, when we're done, are dealt with in a special way. They can't just be thrown into the washing machine. That would kind of defeat the whole purpose of what we're doing here. So our ladies of St. Peter's so wonderfully take great care to clean these cloths by soaking them in water. And then that water is either poured directly into the ground, or, I don't know if you know this, but in our sacristy here at St. Peter's, we have a cool sink called a sacrarium that drains right into the ground, doesn't go into the sewer system. And so it's a way of taking that extra special care of the Blessed Sacrament, this great gift that God has given to us. So thank you to the ladies of St. Peter's, formerly known as the Altar Society, for taking great care of our sacred linens. I once thought it was the angels that were cleaning our cloths every week, but I had been corrected about that. So it's indeed the Altar Society that takes great care that we have these cloths to be used at every Mass. Another thing I'd like to talk about is this bowl. You might have recognized it as the bowl that's used to wash the hands of the priest. It is called a lavabo. Now, before you get all excited thinking, wow, that is such a strange name, it means eye wash. I know, we're really creative, right? These are cruets that are used to hold the water and wine during Mass. This is called a pall. You might be familiar with a funeral pall. This is a chalice pall that's used to cover the chalice, and it has a very important use to keep the flies out. Believe you me, it's very important to have, because as soon as I don't have a pall, the flies just start coming from everywhere. So it's a very important thing that we use during Mass. Then we have, of course, the host itself that we use for Mass. Now, host comes from the Latin word hostia, which simply means victim. Christ became a victim for us, and so we call the bread that we use a host. And then we have a paten that holds the host up and keeps the host protected. Finally, the chalice holds within it the precious blood of Jesus. So as you can see, there are many really cool things that we use. Another thing that you might not have noticed is the aspergillium. Did you know that's what this little sprinkler is called? I think I just sprinkled a little water there. Whoops. The aspergillium is Latin for mushroom because apparently this thing looks like a mushroom. I don't get it, whatever, but it's called an aspergillium. And then something we don't use very often at St. Peter's, but we do certainly at Easter and at funerals, is incense. Now, incense has several purposes. You know, a lot of things we use in the church have practical reasons that we use them first, and then spiritual reasons. Now, historically, incense came because during the Roman Empire, which is, like I said, when the church began to flourish, Roman senators were always preceded by incense. Well, of course, when Christianity became legal, bishops had the same legal status as senators of Rome. And so they would have incense processed in front of them, just like the senators of Rome. Rome has since disappeared, but the church remains, and so those customs remain in the church. Another use for incense is very practical, especially I think perhaps during the medieval ages. Incense has a very powerful odor, as many of you know, and it helps cover up some of the smell. Not a huge problem today, but certainly has been a problem in different ages of the church. And finally, when we see the smoke rising up of incense, we should see our prayers rising up to heaven. So indeed, there's lots of cool things and reasons for the things that we do. Finally, a few other things I'd like to show you while we're in the sacred space of the sacristy is we have several relics that I think are just really cool, really awesome to know about. And I'd like to just focus on two of them today. The first is a relic of our patron, St. Peter himself. And I believe what we have here is a piece of bone of the apostle. So that's a really cool treasure that we have here at St. Peter's. We have the relics of quite a few other saints and martyrs as well, but that's one that's very near and dear to my heart. And then another relic that we have is a relic of the true cross. Very fitting to know about during this season of Lent. Just a little sliver of the cross. And there are many pieces of this cross throughout the world. They say if we put all these pieces of the cross together, that it would make up 1/3 of the cross. So some very awesome things. So that's just a little bit about the things that we use during Mass. Stay tuned to hear about how the priest vests for Mass. Friends, it's time to get vested for Mass. So the first thing that the priest puts on is what we call an amice. Now the amice has a very practical use of covering up the secular clothing that the priest wears. Now I know what you're thinking, really? The Roman collar is a secular piece of clothing? But yes, for the priest, it's his ordinary clothes. And so we cover up the ordinary clothes to prepare for the holy sacrifice that we're about ready to enter into. The second thing, the garment that you're well aware of, is the alb. Now, the alb is very important because it is that symbol of our baptism. We wore that white garment, and truly the alb is something that any Christian can wear as a symbol of their baptism. Now, the alb comes from the Latin word albus, which means, drum roll please, white garment. I know you're shocked by that. Oh man, I'm a mess here. So, it's shocking, I know, but that's what the alb is all about. It's that Christian garment that is a reminder of our baptism, and indeed that the priest himself is a member of the baptized. And then the priest puts on a cincture. Now, the cincture is to tie things up a little bit, to be that symbol of purity. And so that is the next thing that the priest puts on. And then the priest puts on the stole. Now, any cleric can wear a stole, whether he's a deacon, priest, or bishop. And the way he wears the stole tells you what he is. So if he were to wear his stole like this, across, he would be a deacon. More traditionally, a priest would wear his stole crossed because he has holy orders, but he is tied down by the authority of the bishop. So it's a good, humble reminder to the priest that he works as a servant of his bishop. And then finally, the bishop would wear his stole fully down like this to show that he has the fullness of holy orders. Now, most priests wear their stoles like this today as well, but it's a good reminder of the authority that the bishop has over the priests. And then, just in case the priest says, look at all this authority I have, he has to put on the chasuble. And what does the chasuble represent? Charity. So it's a reminder to the priest that even though he may have some authority, his authority is only at the service of the people of God, to help him serve and love the people of God better. Now, just a few words about colors. We have different colors for different seasons, different feast days. So we're obviously wearing purple because we're in a penitential season of Lent. We also wore purple during the season of Advent. Red is used on Palm Sunday, on Good Friday, and on any feast of the martyrs. White would be worn during Christmas or Easter or on the Feast of the Saints. Green is worn during ordinary time. Rose can be worn on Gaudete Sunday or on Lautari Sunday, the fourth Sunday of Lent coming up here. Weddings, you would wear white. Funerals have 3 different options. You can wear white, which most people wear today, representing the resurrection. You can wear purple, representing the penance we should do for the faithful departed. Or you can wear black, which you hardly ever see anymore, but it's that sign of mourning. So these different colors of our vestments help us enter into the day or the season that we're in. So, now that we're all dressed and ready for Mass, let's go.